going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and kind of start the meeting off. I'm actually here downtown in our downtown office. We have power, but we don't have air conditioning. So, hey, we take what we can get, right? So here we are. I'm gonna go ahead and get the meeting started. I'm gonna go ahead and start off. So again, number one, I want to thank Bob and I want to thank Lester for joining us today because, and obviously Brent, can't forget him, for joining us today because it is, I think the information that we're going to receive today is going to be incredibly important to remind us every step along the process. You've got your lender, you've got your title company, and then you also have your insurance agent who will be able to help you advise your clients and kind of move forward from where we are now. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get the call started off with Brent, and let me go ahead and find him so I can unmute him. There we go. Brent, you're on your phone? Are you able to unmute yourself? I just asked you to
I think I'm unmuted.
There you go. All right. So we have
Look
Brent.
at me.
We got Brent here, who is, for those of you who don't know, I assume everybody here knows who Brent is, but he is the branch manager of the Edwards Mortgage Group, a part of Eustace Mortgage here in New Orleans. And we just, again, want to make sure that we are giving y'all all the information you need to help move forward. So take it away, Brent.
All right, guys. Well, look, hopefully everybody is safe, and I really still can't believe I've lived through two once in a lifetime storms and having to deal with this all over again. But we obviously, with Katrina, this is Ida was a much different storm, mainly a wind event, and so a much different process that we're going through now than what we went through back in 2005. But still the same in a lot of regards. And so really what I wanted to go over with you guys today is what we're doing as far as properties that are under contract, that appraisals have been done and have been submitted to us. What we have, and listen, I will tell you this, there are a lot of, obviously there's a ton of lenders out there. Not all lenders are doing the same thing that we're doing over at Eustace Mortgage. So my point being, you really need to make sure you're in touch with those loan officers, find out what they're requiring, and then go from there. What we're requiring is that if the appraisal has been done, or if there is an appraisal waiver, regardless, we actually need pictures of the front of the house, including, having the municipal number show up in the picture, both sides of the house, the rear of the property, and the street scene. Okay, and if there's no damage to the property, we're good. We don't need to send an appraiser out, and we can close the loan. In fact, we closed the VA loan on Friday. We've got two more scheduled to close today. So these are all good things. Now, this is on any type of conforming loan and or VA loan, okay, that we can do this on. On government loans for mainly FHA or RD, we are actually going in and taking those pictures and closing the loan, with the caveat that once the appraisers are back in town and that we can get another appraiser out, they have to go in and inspect the property. What we're telling the clients is... Brent,
I'm actually going to stop you real quick, because I'd actually just talked to Kate DeKay, who is the owner of Eustace, and she confirmed for me, I wanted to make sure I was given the right information. So it's actually RD and VA, we can just use the pictures to close. It's the FHA loans that are going to require an appraisal, the appraiser, like a full reinspection 2 weeks after the event. So 2 weeks
after the event, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking to the clients or we're talking to the agents, we're emphasizing, don't tell us there's no damage if there's damage, right? Because there is an affidavit they have to sign, the borrowers have to sign, that states that there is no damage to the property. And if it's an FHA loan, an appraiser has to go back out and there was a shingle missing and there's water damage inside the house, that's going to pose a lot of problems. Okay. So, if there are no, the good part is if there is no damage to the property, we can close, right? That's the good news for that. A lot of lenders, you know, I've worked for a couple different places. They're going to want appraisers going back out and taking those pictures. Okay, so you could have delays on that, and that's where your patience has got to come in, and the buyer's patience has to come in, because the appraisers are just like us. We don't know when they're going to come back in. We have no idea when they're going to have power, when they're going to have internet. They're going to, you know, and all these good things. So, you know, that could take some time. Okay. What I would say is that if you do have properties, we have a couple properties that do have damage to them. And, you know, obviously mainly roof, but now you also have problems with properties that now have water intrusion into the house, and there's sheetrock damage and so forth and so on. If there is roof damage and the roof damage is minimal and it's $5,000 or less, or any damage to the property, as long as it's $5,000 or less, Eustis can handle a repair escrow, and they can close as long as the repairs can get done in a 15-day period of time. Okay, so keep that in mind as to what type of damage you're looking at. If it's minimal, you know, let's get it fixed and closed, and we do a repair, or the sellers can potentially maybe fix the damage prior to the act of sale. So, you know, there's a lot of ways that this is going is being, or these problems are being handled. And what's really interesting, you know, it's not really interesting, but the buyers, for the most part, you know, some are just chomping at the bit to close and get into the property. Others are wanting the power to turn on so they can go back in and walk through the property, make sure there's no damage before they're ready to close. So it's getting there piece by piece. And it really, obviously, just like every deal, it depends on, at this point, it depends on the property. If you have a property or a deal that the appraisal was done but not delivered, you're going to have that. It's as if, you know, the property was the appraisal was already delivered. In other words, you're going to have to go back out and get those pictures, okay, or whatever the lender is going to require, because it's, you know, it's going to timestamp the delivery date, but the pictures are going to be from prior to the storm. So again, not knowing that if there's any damage to the property, that's all going to have to be rectified. If you have properties that obviously don't have an appraisal on it, well, then you're fine as long as the property's in good shape, and we just have to wait for the appraisers to get up and running, which slowly but surely they're obviously all coming back in town and getting up and running just like the rest of us. So it is going to take time. You know, and I know Bob will probably talk about the hurricane addendum and all these contracts, and they do extend time. You do have to talk to the lenders if it's not us on the rate lock extensions. We're giving automatic 2 free-week extensions for clients to cover their rate lock, so they don't have to worry about that. But some lenders might not give any. Some out-of-state lenders might be, sorry, this can't help you, and the client's got to pay for an extension fee. So these are all things that you need to check on case by case with each one of your clients. Have them call the lenders, make sure that they're on board and moving forward. And other than that, I mean, like I said, Friday was a little challenging on our closing because the title attorney did not have power, and we had to make arrangements for him to go print the package somewhere. But as the title companies are coming back online, we should be getting closer to normal every day that goes by. But that's it for us right now. I mean, and I will tell you this: we do offer, just, you know, a little shameless plug, but we do offer a construction loan on properties, so on a rehab basis. So if it is something that the client, you know, there was damage to the property, clients still want to buy it, sellers can't repair it because they don't have the money, or they don't want to wait for the insurance company, whatever the case may be, we can come to step in and help close these deals with a construction product with as little as 5% down, and it's a 2 or 3K for an FHA loan with 3.5% down. So there are some options out there, and again, much different than Katrina when the majority of the city was flooded. These are, you know, hopefully minor damages that we're dealing with, as opposed to, you know, trees through houses or something like that. And that's all I have to say, Elizabeth. Any questions?
I don't see any questions coming in, but I'm going to kind of just give us a full recap, because I know we covered a lot of information there. Number one is we're going to need property inspections done, right? And it doesn't have to be that much. And Britt, do you know the answer to this question? Who can perform the property inspections? Can the real estate agents perform the property inspections? Can the borrower perform the property inspections? And again, the property inspections in most cases on conventional loans is just going to be a picture of the front, the back, maybe a side photos if you're feeling it, and street view. Can that be done by the customer, by the borrower?
Absolutely. It can be by the borrower, it can be by the real estate agent, doesn't matter. It can be by the seller for that matter. I mean, as long as they come in and they show that, you know, like I said, they have those 5 pictures and it shows the municipal number on the house so that we know that it is our property, then we're in good shape. We've been getting a ton of pictures today, so.
Great. And again, this is for properties that already have the appraisals done and that need to have, just to confirm that there's no damage, just need to have these pictures done. If the appraisal hasn't been done, then we're just going to move forward as planned with the appraisal, and the appraisal will confirm that there's no property damage. So that's kind of where we stand. And FHA is the only exception to this rule, where it has to be the appraiser has to go back and re-inspect the property 2 weeks from the event. That you know, so all that's important. And then one last little note is that if you have a condo, which I know must, you know, we do have a lot of condos, one of the pictures must be the main condo entrance. And then Maya, it looks like you have a question. I see you here with your hand raised. I'm gonna try to unmute you if you can.
Yes, I was just wondering if an appraiser has to come back out and reinspection is needed, who's paying for that? The buyer, the seller, the lender?
Generally, it's the buyer's cost, but the lender could pick it up. I mean, it's not much. It's about $100. They generally charge anywhere from $100 to $150 to go back out and reinspect. And it's generally the buyer's cost. Okay.
And again, that cost, when you're talking about, again, that's what, $150 in the scheme of buying a house during hurricane season. I would want to spend that money to ensure that the house is going to be that it's safe, that there's no damage. You know, if you're spending over $100,000 on a house, you know, an extra $150 is not going to be, hopefully not a deal breaker. But okay, well, I think that covers all of my questions, and I don't know that I have any additional questions here as far as lending goes. And John, I do see your question about, but I feel like I'm going to let Lester answer your question about it's an insurance question. So sit tight on that one, because he's going to be the one to be able to answer your question, John. Just so you know, I do see it. So please feel free to send the chats in and continue to either text or whatever to get me the questions that you have. But that being said, I'm going to actually hand the phone over to Bob. Yeah, I just feel like that's how we usually do the calls. It goes from Britt to Bob. So sorry, Lester. I'm gonna let you finish off the call with everything. So, all right. So Bob, take it away.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Lester, we're saving the best for last. So on there. But hey, thanks for letting me jump on. And Brent, what I heard you say with 2 things jumped out. One is not all lenders are the same. And that's really true. I mean, you and I were talking Tuesday or Wednesday right after the storm and plotting it. We both are survivors or veterans of the Katrina episode where you were trying to get things back in the game. And I think those of you who went through Katrina, this is not a Katrina. I mean, the fact that you don't have standing water is it. The fact that when you had 3 feet of water in your house, you couldn't live there. When you have a hole in your roof, a tree branch on your roof, you can tarp it and still live there. So this is different. This is going to be a much better experience getting back. I mean, I don't want to do it again. And like Brent, I thought we only had one 100-year storm during each lifetime, but we're now on a couple of these things. But we're getting back. We are not the title company that we do have power. We've got all 6 of our offices up and running. Not 2 of our offices are working out of another office. Our Destrehan office received some damage, and they're working out of our Metairie office, and our Elysian Fields office is still waiting on power, and they're working here at our Maple Street office. So we're working. We closed 2 deals last Friday, and we're able to close. We're closing at least 1 or 2 today. So it's moving. But let's talk about the ones that aren't getting the closings and what happens. Some buyers are going to run out of time and decide they don't want to go forward. So we've issued already 2 deposit check returns that we were holding today. We have this app called Zocam, which let people, even during the hurricane, the night of the hurricane, people were putting a deposit down on their house using the ZOCCAM Zocam app, where they just snap a picture and it goes in. So that was kind of interesting. Here it is, the wind's blowing outside and people are making deposits. But some buyers are going to say, I'm just moving on. And some buyers are going to say there was damage to the property and I'm not going forward. If there's damage to the property, there are ways that you can work around that working with your lender. And that is that you could, as the seller, you could retain the claim, and we can put together a retention of insurance claim. So the seller keeps the claim, sells the property to the buyer, and gives the buyer a reduction in price or gives the buyer credit to go forward and close. The other way is that sometimes you have buyers, and this is not for the faint of heart, but a buyer might come in and say, look, I'll buy the property with the damage, just turn over your claim to me and I'll go work it. And taking into account the deductible, taking into account anything else, and we could put together an assignment of insurance claim. We've already got one that we're doing today. So those things can be done. Property that might not be saleable can be saleable. You want to check with your insurance agent. You want to make sure it's very specifically requires cooperation of both parties going forward. But those are things that can be done. The preferred way is for the seller to keep the claim and the seller to work the claim as they would, but to give a credit. I've been on the phone with one this morning where the lender, the closing set for tomorrow. The lender needs 2 days until Friday to be able to reinspect the property and close. The seller can't be out of the house because the mover's canceled on her, and she's tried 4 different moving companies. The only one that can do it is one out of Florida, and they want her to put the workers up in a hotel, and she can't find a place. So it's kind of stuck. So we're in this back and forth where the buyer says, I need to close and I need an extension from Wednesday to Friday, and that can work. But the seller's saying, I need an extension until next Wednesday because I need to get my stuff out and I need time to get my stuff out. And so it's really a mess, and they're both putting their armor up, and neither one wants to bend. And we're trying to craft some kind of solution where maybe there's an extension, but in exchange for that, the seller puts up money, and if she's not out by a certain day, it's a $2,000 or $3,000 a day penalty to try to keep this deal together. We're going to fix it. There's always a solution to the problems. There's talk of lawsuits. I tell you, no one is filing suit right now. The courthouses are closed. So that might be your next question. Hey, Bob, how is Crescent Title closing? How are they getting recording? We have 4 different title insurance underwriters, and we've gotten at least one that has agreed to allow us to close, even though we can't update the title necessarily. And we've got a connection at the courthouse that as soon as they're open, we're going to be recording that morning and get things done. So we can close and get things closed. The Jefferson Parish records were ransomware. Believe it or not, when things get bad, it gets even worse. So sometime after the hurricane, someone got into their computer system, and they're still trying to work around that. Fortunately, they have magnetic tape. I didn't know they still made that, but they had backed up a lot of their documents. So hopefully they'll get up and running sooner rather than later on that. Orleans is running and operating fairly well. So, but if anything, it takes patience right now. Extensions are good if you can get the extension done. Give chance for the property to make sure that everything's handled. Give chance for the parties to settle down. Give chance for the buyers to get back in town, sellers get back in town, and make things work. If you have the hurricane addendum, congratulations, kudos, because it gives an automatic extension when a storm hits, and that's fine. Sometimes it's a certain number of days till that, and each one is crafted differently. So look at that. But a hurricane, just so everybody knows, a hurricane, even one at Category 4 that hits head on, does not give an automatic extension to the contract. Your purchase agreement put out by the LREC does not give an automatic extension for an act of God or a hurricane or anything else, which is why the hurricane addendum is in place. If I learned anything from Katrina, it is get back and running, get with your clients, talk to your clients. It's, is it a good time to buy? It is. Interest rates are still great. You might need more than ever, you want a house that's in a different location because of the storm or other things. So look for that. Time to sell. Maybe you're tired of the hurricanes, you want to move somewhere else in somewhere different area. It's still time, but communicate with your clients, be out there, be up and running. FEMA is offering, just an FYI, $500 for people for if they were in the hurricane. They're giving up to $800 for a generator and up to $250 for a chainsaw. So you might just pull up that email from WWL and forward it to your clients. It might be something that gets your name back out in front of them and what you're dealing with them. So consider that. And then the last thing, just wanted to touch on, unless you had anything else, was that landlord-tenant laws. Typically, if you don't have this in your lease, you really want the clause. And if anybody says, Bob, I don't have it in my lease, would you send it to me? We're happy to send it to you. But it says that if there's power loss, the tenant's still responsible for paying the utilities, but for paying the rent. So even though, just like, if Brent made a loan to me and I can't make I don't have electricity, I still have to pay the mortgage. I still have to pay the assessor for taxes. I still have to pay the insurance. So there's still obligations that go with it. It doesn't mean that as a lessor that you can't give people a break. You might say, look, we were out of electricity for 8 days. How about this? I'll give you 4 days credit and you take 4 days. I'll give you all the credit. You can do whatever you want. If you have a really good tenant, you might want to be more generous. If you have a really bad tenant, you don't have to be generous. So look for that. But tenants, there is an obligation to pay rent. Some people are going to try to cancel their lease. If there's damage to the property that can't be repaired timely, then that tenant might have an ability to get out. And if there's no damage at all, the tenant probably doesn't have an ability to get out of that. But in general, again, if you have questions or one of your tenants, or you're trying to get access to a property that you have listed that has multifamily, look for it and see the status before your buyer goes to a closing. What's the status of rent payments? Have they been made? And where do they stand? So thanks a lot. But if you get in the game, I tell you, that's the biggest thing I learned from Katrina. Just get back. Every day becomes a little bit easier, and then you get back to normal.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bob. I do have a couple questions, kind of my own. So the courthouses, are they open in Jefferson Parish? They're not open in Jefferson Parish, but they are open in Orleans. The
courthouses themselves, the physical courthouses are closed until the 20th as of now. Okay. But we do have online access. So we're able to get into Orleans, St. Tammany, Jefferson when it's working, St. Bernard. So we're able to do some work. And then if we have a file that's ongoing, hopefully we have the title work back from that. So we're able to get to a closing table from that standpoint.
Okay, and what about the abstractors are able to get the work done that they need to get done online?
For the most part, the abstractors can get. If you've got a big succession or some issue, they may not be able to. But on general, I would tell you that 90% of deals we can get to the closing table.
Okay, so most of the deals we're able to get to the closing table, even though the courthouses aren't fully functional.
Correct.
Okay, and then kind of going back on the renters and leasing. This feels very much like many of our phone calls during COVID, where it's a matter of try to work with your tenants as best you can. What was COVID? I forgot about that. What was that? Right? I know it's funny, and honestly, if anybody went to Florida or Alabama, which I did, it's like there's no COVID anywhere. You could tell a Louisianian because they had masks available. But anyways, so if you have tenants, do you have any advice for somebody that has, let's say, a 4-unit property, and let's say some of the properties have damage, some of them don't, but people, how do you, and some people are able to pay their rent even though they don't have power, but some people aren't because let's say they're in the service industry. Do you have any advice as far as, and I'm sorry, I know I'm just kind of throwing you under the bus on this one.
Yeah, no.
Do you have any good advice for people dealing with those types of situations where one person might not be able to, in the same house where they might be communicating, but other people might?
Yeah, I mean, my advice goes back to, what goes around comes around. If you can help somebody, it sometimes can endear your tenants to you, who's going to stay. Maybe they're not going to be quick to move next time. There's some lessors out there who are not being very kind to their tenants, and that's not good business sense. It's like, as an agent or a lender, you're not being kind to your clients or your borrowers. So, but to look at it, maybe a chance to get rid of that bad tenant that's been bad for a long time. So look at that as an opportunity. but you can work with your tenants. We waived any late fees on our tenants that we have. We waive those. If you want to pay an installment, we'll work with you on that. Again, FEMA's given everybody $500. So that's at least enough to kind of get some things going for people. And if somebody's going to try to make the effort, we're going to work with them. If somebody's really not going to make the effort, I don't know that that's somebody we want to work with. So sometimes a bird in hand is worth more than two in a bush. But in that instance, it's if I have found just through COVID, if you sort of work with your tenant, you do well. If the property's damaged and they can't get back, maybe help them find another place. Maybe tell them you'll be a good reference for them. Here's my cell phone number. Tell the next person, I'll let you out. I'm not going to charge you obviously anything for September, and I'll give you 2 weeks to get your stuff out. Those are things that you can do to sort of help move people along.
Okay, and reiterating the fact and maybe helping them get the disaster relief from FEMA to help pay rent as a reminder. Okay, and then Andrew,
help send them the FEMA websites and anything. Some people don't even know about the relief that's possibly available. If they have renter's insurance, they can file a claim on that. If you have rent loss insurance, you can file your claim for rent loss, perhaps if there's damage to your property. So look for those things that might help carry you through this.
Gotcha. And then, okay, I see Andrew Graff has a question, so I'm going to unmute him and let him ask.
Hey, yeah, real quick, Bob. I know we've all got a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but a hypothetical that hopefully none of us have to be up against shortly here. But if you have a buyer client in a deal, regardless of what side you're on, the house gets re-inspected, as Brent was talking about, and the lender approves the condition, or the appraiser approves the condition, or whatever it is, and they say, okay, well, there's no mitigating damage from the hurricane. We're basically, this place is as it was August 28th, and we're good to go. But the buyer gets cold feet because they're spooked about New Orleans or whatever, and so they're trying to get out. Is there a mechanism whereby they can use this as a way to get out if the property's in fact good to go and there's no issues that the seller has to remedy to get it moved forward?
Andrew, that's a good question. I tiptoe on those questions because I'm not in the business of helping buyers get out of contracts or sellers get out of contracts. I'll quickly go out of business. But in a nutshell, the way that a buyer is able to walk away is if the property is not in the same or better condition, which is not the case that you described, that the loan doesn't come forward, so the lender doesn't approve it. If you have Brent and Elizabeth, you're probably going to go forward, so you don't have that way to get out. But the ways to typically get out is the deadline can't be met, the property's not in the same or better condition, or you don't have loan approval. But simply cold feet, and I'm changing my mind, a contract's a contract, and you can't back out because you change your mind.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to keep
Sure.
deals together myself, always, just like you. So yeah. I was looking at it from that prism. Obviously, those clauses are the things I was thinking of in any normal contract. I was just wondering if there was some way that it could be manipulated by a buyer with cold feet, but it sounds like no, as long as the property's in conveyable shape like it was before the storm.
Sure. So real quick, practical advice. Sometimes your buyer just needs to calm down a little bit. If they watch the news all day long, they're going to panic. But sometimes it might go to the seller and say, look, can we just do a 3-day extension or a 1-week extension? Give my buyer a chance to get back in town, see that the world hasn't come to an end. The national news that continues to show Laplace being damaged is not what exists uptown New Orleans or in the Bywater or in Kenner necessarily. Give them a chance to calm down, and that sometimes can help. I find that sometimes time makes things better, and so don't hesitate to use an extension if you can, and if you can get the rate lock. 2-week rate lock extension is very generous by Eustis to do that. So consider that.
Okay, and Bob, just real quick, just kind of to wrap things up, the hurricane addendum, generally, how are those operating? I know each one is a little bit different, but can you kind of lean into that a little bit more, just to ensure that we fully understand what the hurricane addendum generally? I know everyone's a little bit different, but generally what that means for your customer.
Yeah, and I can send one of the samples that we have after this call. But generally, a hurricane addendum says that in the event that a hurricane or tropical storm enters the Gulf and it causes an insurance company not to be able to issue insurance or a lender not to be able to close, then the parties hereto agree to an automatic extension until, and it might be 5 days after the storm leaves the Gulf, it might be 5 days or 3 days after the insurance company is able to issue insurance or the lender is able to close, but it says something along those lines. So it's an automatic extension that doesn't require a buyer and seller to re-sign or enter into an amendment to the contract. They're actually worded pretty well, and I'll shoot that out. And if somebody doesn't have one, feel free to use the one we have.
Okay, great. So that's something that, as we are learning here, we should include this time of year, which we've now had to extend to October.
Yes.
But we should make sure that we include hurricane addendums because it just automatically secures the sale of the house.
Exactly.
All right.
Yep.
And then, okay. I will be sending that along with a copy of the recording, the hurricane addendum, and a couple of links that are useful today. So Bob, I really appreciate you taking
Sure.
the time and answering all the questions. And if we have any additional questions at the end, I'll let you know. But right now, probably the man of the hour, the one with the most questions. I've seen 2 questions come up. I got one from Maya, I got one from John that are going to be for Lester, who, again, Lester, I bless your heart. I know you got to be incredibly busy and working as hard as you can. So we really do appreciate it. But I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here, Lester. I think I asked you to unmute if you're available.
Yeah, the reason I was muting it is I'm working remotely at the Wharf, at a coffee shop in the Wharf in Orange Beach. And it's like they're having a concert out here or something. Not really, it's just the music. But so I don't know, can you hear that in the background too loud?
Just a little bit, but it's not too loud. We hear you. We mainly
Okay,
hear you.
I was just going to mute myself in between. I want to start off by thanking you for not having Brent on video. I think Ida was enough of a shock to the system that
totally agree with you.
His face would, might be too much for me. But other than that, fire away.
So Lester, if you don't mind, kind of just giving everybody kind of an idea on what you're doing, what's happening, kind of what's the state, how people should file claims. If let's say they have a deductible that hasn't been met, do they still file a claim? Should they wait? Just kind of give us an overall picture of what you're dealing with right now.
So yes, the short answer is, 12-hour days minimum. Just a lot of folks, for a lot of them, it's the first time filing a claim. So they just need some direction on that. But basically what we're doing is when we can, we file claims form, but the insurance companies, I think would tell you they prefer to hear from the insured filing the claim. And so depending on the carrier, you can do that online or by phone call. And all you're doing really is just making contact with the insurance company, giving them a very brief description of roof damage, water intrusion. Boom. At that point, the claim is filed, they assign a claim number. And then in a perfect world, it'd be 24 to 72 hours to hear from an adjuster. Certainly we're seeing a lot longer waits than that. It stands to reason. You have, a lot of our insurers, other than the State Farm is a big insurer in the state, and so is Allstate. Most of those are very old policies. The rest of them, and you guys have probably seen it, you probably do, well, you don't do any new State Farm policies, probably, but probably very few Allstate. So most of the other carriers are smaller regional carriers, and who are like in South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana. And so in an event like this, I know I'm seeing, I would imagine some of these companies have, it's just a guess, as much as 50 to 60% of their insureds filing claims, which is a big hit. And the market was not in good shape at the time of Ida, as a result of, primarily it was as a result of so many claims, widespread worldwide, but even in the US, and even in the, and so, and a lot of that, so again, if you're a lender, you're probably experiencing like some of the rates have been higher, a lot higher in some cases, the last 6 months to a year.
Mhm.
Most of that happens because of, so these insurance companies, right, they keep a certain amount of money in the bank and they're responsible for a certain amount of claims. The rest of it is what we call reinsurance. So you'll have these companies in London or all over the world that basically, you know, an insurance company will pay X amount of dollars and they're going to assume the risk over a certain dollar figure, basically for catastrophic events. And here we are at another catastrophic event. So that's, I suspect that's not going to help reinsurance rates down here. And so that just gets passed off, you know, they don't suck that up. So I don't really, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen moving forward because, I mean, you even had a company, Gulfstream, that went belly up. We haven't seen that since Katrina, and that was before Ida. So, but as far as the nuts and bolts of, and then look, it's back to the claims part. If you happen to talk to anybody, very quick rule of thumb, file your claim, take photos of everything, especially prior to doing anything, keep receipts, mitigate damage where you can. The most obvious is like, I got a hole in my roof, try and cover it. The insurance company wants you to mitigate the damage, you know, so that you don't get another rain coming in. Where possible, they prefer you to not do actual repairs until you've at least spoken to an adjuster. Sometimes you can't get around that, but that's the preference. Everybody's going to have on their policy, everybody here probably has a policy, one form or another. So you're not ever looking at the all other perils deductible in an event like this. So some policies are going to say wind, hail, some are going to say hurricane. When it's a hurricane, it doesn't matter. It's going to be this, you know, because it's going to be a named storm hurricane deductible. And I would say, you know, the last several years, very few carriers would offer anything less than 2%. Although we had some Bankers, Progressive, and some, you know, people getting crazy low deductibles of like, well, honestly, I have $1,000 named storm deductible, which I was going to lose in January, but that's because I was with Bankers with a certain company. But for the most part, it's going to be 2% or higher. You hope it's not higher than 2%. I don't really understand why people get higher than 2%, but and I don't write anything higher than 2%. But so that's going to be 2% of your coverage A, which is basically not including your contents or anything, just what you have the structure insured for. So if you have a $300,000, if you're insuring the house for $300,000 and you got a 2% deductible, it's $6,000.
So Lester, can you give us an idea on how long the claims are taking so I'm assuming that our agents, our real estate agents are getting phone calls because that's who they think of the house, they think of the real estate agent. And they're probably asking questions, and many clients have never been through a storm. I mean, obviously this is a catastrophic storm. This is not a storm that we're used to having some tropical storms roll through, but nothing quite like this. What can you tell, what advice can you give for the clients, like as far as timing, how long are the claims taking, and things along in that regard?
I think this would be a safe expectation. I think the expectation should be that your adjuster will come out once the adjuster has.
And how long does it take for the adjuster to get there generally?
Well, you know, it's a bit of first come, first serve, right? So like I got my, knowing what I know, I got my claim in, the day after, and I just met my adjuster yesterday. So he called within, he called me in about 2 days and then said, hey, I'm going to be there Monday between 1 and 2. And he had some documentation to get in that he said that takes 24 hours. And from that point, he said you should give it about the clock start running for about 2 weeks for them to make a determination. Because what happens is generally is you have a field adjuster. It goes to a desk adjuster, I guess, but it basically goes to home office. These adjusters, the field adjusters, oftentimes, and most of the time, don't work for the insurance company.
Right.
They're either independent or they work for an adjusting company or firm. And so then they give their documentation to the actual claims department at the insurance company. And you just hope that the claims department at the insurance company agrees with the adjuster. And, but that's a big if.
Okay.
And, but I would say 2 weeks for them to make a determination. And then, gosh, hopefully you get your money within the next week.
Okay. So once the adjuster's been out and the determination's been made, the money should be coming to your clients within a week. Generally.
After they make it, after you got
the adjust,
confirmation that they've put a dollar figure on the claim.
Okay. Once the dollar figure's there, then the money should be coming pretty quickly.
And
But
at that point, it's going to be a percentage. Now, again, some of this is just carrier to carrier. So you have some companies that right away, they may actually front you a small percentage of the money. But in general, once you get to a dollar figure, let's just say it's $50,000, chances are they're going to give you 35, and they're going to hold back what they call depreciation. Basically, they're holding back money to see that you complete the repairs. Once you show proof that you've completed it, they'll send you the remainder of it.
The remainder of the money.
I think what's going to happen a lot is because there's so many roof claims that what's going to happen is they're going to use their software to price your roof. And hopefully that's a good number. But let's just say, for instance, that they price the roof at $15,000 and you can't get anybody to do it for less than 20.
Right.
Or 25. It's not the end of the road. You just submit proof of that. And I would say, I'd be very surprised if any reputable carrier is not going to pay you that difference.
Did not. Okay. And then, so speaking of roofs, since we're on the subject, let's say, is it better? Let's say you have a couple shingles that you're missing, right? You don't have you don't necessarily need a full roof repair. Is that going to hurt you down the road? Should you just replace the whole roof? Should you just replace those few shingles? Like, how does that process work? What's the best?
So in general, let's start here. In general, an act of God, a storm like this, a wind event, is not supposed to hurt you at all. As far as scarlet letter.
Okay.
What can potentially hurt you are different types of claims, more like a water claim, but not this type of water claim, like a busted water heater,
Gotcha. Okay.
fire, theft. Those will follow you depending on the carrier. We have some carriers that are like, we don't want any water claims in the last 3 years, but they're not talking about a storm. So,
Okay.
so no one should be afraid to file. Like, the reason to not file a claim would not be because I'm worried it's going to hurt me in the future. That shouldn't be the primary reason to not file a claim. But one thing you're going to find is as soon as your roof gets exposed, I mean, it could be nothing. It could be just some shingles, boom, not a big deal. Okay, I got nothing. But you definitely want to inspect it closer, because I just had somebody in my office today that just got back in their house yesterday, and the neighbors were like, "Oh, you're just missing a few shingles." But once she got in the house, she got water. She had water damage all over the place.
Okay.
So, I mean, you should see my house. My house is a wreck. But as soon as you kind of, that's why insurance companies are so, this is a whole nother topic, but they're super sensitive these days. As the market gets tight or hard, as we've been in, the number one thing by far is age of the roof. That's what they want to know. You can tell them I got 20-year-old electrical box, but I got a 2021 roof, and they're going to love it.
Okay. So what are they looking for as far as age of the roof? Like, what's the happy number?
Yeah, so I think depending on the carrier, it used to be, we would say 15 years. Some carriers started to go to 12 years and 10 years old,
Okay.
where this is for new business. But I think one of the side effects, because this is different than Katrina, although we had a lot of Katrina roofs, but this is really because it's such a wind event.
It was, yeah. Mhm.
All these new roofs in the long run could potentially help you on your rate. It just depends on where the market's going to be. But because they're so sensitive to a roof, and you'll notice this, you look at, if anybody here has a new roof, I suspect they probably didn't have any damage or very little. compared to people with a little older roof. I mean, there's a
Right.
reason for it.
Mhm.
And my roof looked great, but it was still 15 years old and it's, demolished.
Sure.
And I got
sure.
neighbors next to me with a new roof who should have been hit just as hard as me, and they're fine. So there's a reason why they're really sensitive to it, because it's the big gatekeeper. You can see what's happening. Once you got a faulty roof, I mean, again, my house, because I have holes and damage in my roof, I'm probably gonna have to gut 60% of my house, all
Okay.
because of the roof.
All because of the roof. Okay.
So I was telling Brent that before, and I've told everything. And if there's any real estate agents on here, it's to say, buyer, seller, whatever. I mean, especially if you're working, if you're working for the seller, I would think it's a selling point to have a new roof. And if you're working for the buyer, I would say you want to negotiate a new roof one way or another, if possible, because that's going to be, and because the market's only going to get harder, which means they're probably going to be only more sensitive to roofs.
Okay, so roofs are an important aspect. So for Lester, moving forward, what about new business? Unless your insurance was down before the storm, are we having issues binding insurance? What's going on that? We're all here to make money and to close deals, and we have deals in process that didn't have insurance in place. What's your advice for people for new insurance, or are we having any issues with insurance that has not yet been bound?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be pretty in the next couple of months. I mean, I know right now there's a lot of, so when the market gets hard, like it's been, and if you're a lender, you'll notice this, you probably saw a lot of the same familiar faces on as companies that were binding a lot of the policies recently, that were real aggressive, whereas everybody else had higher rates. We have some companies like Occidental, Sakeshire companies, and a few others that they've been kind of the go-to companies to insure. Well, they're getting whacked right now. And so the most competitive companies recently are the ones right now that have not opened for binding. And I don't know when that's going to happen.
Okay.
So in listening to all the conversations prior to me, I would say that it sounded fairly rosy. I would say it's not rosy on the insurance side.
It's not, okay, so.
I mean, there are companies that are binding. I would say they're not going to be the most competitive companies. They're probably the ones that maybe had a little less exposure than some of the other ones. So we need to start factoring in or assuming some higher rates.
A little bit of a higher
At
rate,
the
okay.
very
And
least, yeah.
do you foresee in the relatively near future that those companies that were writing here are going to continue to write and give it a month, or and let's say you have somebody who has to close, and they might have to use one of those, a little bit of a higher rate to get the deal
Yes.
done. That's what we're all here for, to getting the deal done.
Yep.
So we get the deal done. How hard is it for them to switch their policy once more and more people are writing in the state?
So I think there's going to be two things here, right, that we've talked about. So on the one hand, it's going to be harder to bind. And as far as companies go, yeah, you're going to have some that are just going to say, you know what, we're not writing anymore in Louisiana. Obviously, it happened to Katrina. It's going to happen here. But a lot of these folks are going to come out, these houses are going to come out with new roofs. So
Okay.
that may help. That may at least mitigate the pain of the higher premium.
Okay.
But man, it's still a little early to tell right now. I mean, right now we're just like Lucille Ball on the chocolate line, just trying to keep that going. It's hard to even. So as far as where,
Just keep on going,
Claims.
file the claims, get it done. Mhm.
without knowing exactly what's going to happen in the market. I mean, I think we'll know a lot in the next 30 days. I would say one other thing is, I think it's called Rule 47. So anybody who was not renewing or being non-renewed, because that was happening a lot, or they were going to renew and they wanted to switch and their premium. Anyway, you can't get canceled right now or non-renewed. And that's at least for 60 days. That could get extended to 90 to a year. We don't
Okay.
know. So there is protection for people with existing policies. But of course, you guys are all concerned about new business. And so, it's the new business side that's going to be I
What?
just don't know, man.
We just, okay, so we don't have the clear answers on new business. There are still people that are writing, so we can get the deals done, right? Right, so there's insurance companies that are writing binding policies now, right?
Yeah.
And then we have okay, so let's say we have, because the market's been so crazy, and this is going to be the situation for a number of people where they bound insurance, let's say the Monday before the storm, and they were supposed to close on Friday, and they are Monday, right? So they bound it a week ahead of time because they were like, oh, rumblings, we didn't quite know how bad it was going to be. What happens if you have a bound insurance policy? When do you have to close in order to ensure that you're going to get that same rate?
So let me see if I follow you. You've already got a bound policy?
Correct. So this is something that we did right before the storm. We knew something was was maybe going to be in the Gulf. We clearly didn't know how bad it was going to be, and we called. You probably received several phone calls from Blaine, your office, right?
Yeah.
Binding the insurance, making sure that we had the insurance bound before the storm. But let's say they were scheduled to close on that following Monday, and they haven't closed yet because,
Go ahead and close. What I would say is go ahead and close. Don't touch that policy.
So that's when do you have to close it?
Possible.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible, and I wouldn't touch the policy.
And don't touch the policy. Okay.
As long as the lender's okay with the policy that started,
Okay, so if we, because that is definitely an act, which is something that we've always done. As a lender, I've done it. I've been in the business about 10 years, and every time there's a storm or there's the inkling of the storm, we call you, and we say, hey, let's get this bound. We're closing next week. Let's go. So if that is the case, and so if anybody on the phone call has clients that already have their policy bound, even if the title company you're closing with, and Bob, this is where you're going to step in, is where we need to close it no matter what, because how long does the bound policy last before we have to close?
Well, the insurance company is assuming, but after you bind the policy, the insurance company, the only thing else they want to know is when's the money coming.
Okay.
For the most part. I mean, if this wasn't a storm situation, or anything like this, I would just say, yeah, we'll go ahead and change the start date on it. But one of the things about binding restrictions is it also limits, for the most part, with most carriers, any kind of endorsements to the policy. Right? So you're really going to muddy the waters if you try and now. Had they had a claim during the time and they don't have an insurable interest, they wouldn't have been able to collect on the house.
That's a different, okay.
But,
let's say the house is they bound the policy before the storm, and there's no property damage, and they just don't have electricity yet, or the title company doesn't have electricity yet, and they're not able to close. They haven't been able to close or they're with you in Orange Beach and they haven't come back to town. How is there a cutoff time before you have to close once
I would use 30 days as a rule of thumb.
30 days. Okay. So you have a little bit of time on that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I would assume you guys are the ones that are in a rush, right?
Well,
because of the
that's kind of where the question was lying. Is it you or I that have the hard timeline? It sounds like we do because of the rate. Because we extend, so we lock the loan generally for 30 days, because that's how contracts are written these days, in 30 days, because it's competitive. So we lock it for 30 days. And now Eustis has been very kind to extend our rate for another 2 weeks. And so it sounds like if the policy's already been bound, you're okay for about 30 days. But we have that additional 2 week extension that we have to meet. And then, okay, so
I would just add one thing. I'd say, just in general, I think the companies that are going to be the most lenient about binding during this period are going to be the non-admitted, the surplus lines companies. So you're going to see a lot of Lloyd's of London, Scottsdale, Beasley, companies like that just have a lot more flexibility. And so those are probably going to be a lot of the companies that are going to be binding sooner than later.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, all right. So kind of changing gears a little bit. This is something that I just learned about. So I was not here for Katrina as a preference, but loss of use of your refrigerator. That's a fileable claim that people can, you can file a claim?
Well, there's
to-
not a, no, well, there's not a coverage for loss of use of a refrigerator. But it's just, it's loss of use.
Lots of content or
So-
whatever you have. Mhm.
So your refrigerator is considered contents.
Okay.
If you're talking about the food inside or whatever that might have spoiled, you got to read the policy. I think the bigger question that people has is just the loss of use in general, like that
Right.
payment. So always remember what triggers that coverage, because it is triggered. It's generally not a standalone coverage. It's triggered by a property damage claim. So when you have a covered loss, whether it's a shingle or whatever, that now triggers or can trigger your additional living expenses. Then, at that point, the house is supposed to be technically unlivable. I think basically they're going to pay you to relocate. For them being, most of the companies are going to pay you to relocate. And then there's some nuances to that, whether you're staying in a hotel or whether you're staying at, like I'm staying at a friend's place, and even if I pay him, because it has a kitchen, they're not going to pay me for food. Because the assumption is, remember, the coverage is for additional expenses, basically, that you would not normally have incurred. So if you were living at home, you'd have a kitchen, you'd be buying food. The assumption is if you're living in a house with a kitchen, then you'd normally be buying that food anyway. So remember, none of these are cut in stone, but these are good rule of thumb stuff, because it is a coverage that, depending on the carrier, they can make allowances for certain things. And I think that's going to be fluid as we move forward. But, so a hotel, yes, food, because you don't have a kitchen. And so, but if you have somebody in a situation where they're staying at a friend's house or whatever, just have them write you up a little bill and pay them something, and you're going to get paid for it, or you should get paid for it. And it's part of your claim.
Okay.
So again, part of that too, I think originally you were asking, like, what if I have a few shingles missing? Well, my rule of thumb is if you're on the fence about filing a claim, file the claim.
Okay. That was gonna, yeah, that was gonna
Because
be
there's
my
a
next
lot of
question.
ways to get to your deductible.
Okay.
And most of us aren't contractors or adjusters who it's a little above our pay grade to detect necessarily all the possible damage that's at your house. So if you've got damage, I just wouldn't be shy about filing claims. All these
Okay.
things could come into this bucket.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Get your dollar figure up.
Okay. Got it. All right. So just to wrap everything
Oh,
up.
and
I
one
know
other thing, I'm so sorry. Let me add this as a side. Everybody though, even if you have insurance, should be filing with FEMA for disaster relief, because what's going to happen is, I mean, they may have some one-time payments and all that, but I'm talking about just for the typical disaster relief. What I'm pretty sure is going to happen is, and if you've already done it, you know what I'm talking about. You'll go in, you'll do it. They'll ask if you have insurance. You'll get a determination, and that's going to be a decline. You're going to get declined. 100% you're going to get declined.
Okay.
But now you're in the system with the claim. Then later on, if you can show proof that your insurance company did not pay you, because let's say I didn't even file a property damage claim. I mean, I had to evacuate, I was out, but I didn't actually file a claim, or
Okay.
I did file a claim and it never hit the deductible, whatever it may be. They're not going to double pay you, right? But if you can show proof that you were not paid by your insurance company, then FEMA's going to come
FEMA
in.
will pay you. Okay. Okay. So that's
You got to
actually,
get the ball rolling by making sure you file the claim.
so you have to start with FEMA. So
Don't be discouraged because you got declined, because you are going to get declined.
So you file with FEMA, you're going to get declined. Then your insurance is not going to pay you. Then FEMA will pay you to help cover that. Okay.
The way it should work, and you just need to show proof your insurance didn't pay.
Okay. Okay. Great. And then kind of going back on the, let's say again, just to confirm, if you do have a policy that was bound before the storm, the insurance is required, is guaranteed, you're pretty much guaranteed to have that coverage, correct?
Yes, I just was saying, like, if you bound it on the 30th and the storm hit on the 31st, and if you try to file a claim on that policy, no, they're not paying. But I'm saying, with the assumption being that hey,
But for
we've got
new,
a bound
for a
policy.
new house with no damage, you know, the house is in perfectly, then that they're guaranteed they're required to give you that coverage that we bound.
Well, you know, I don't want to put me totally on record for, you know, speaking for the insurance company, but I would just say, I mean, if the house got demolished, right?
Again, no damage. And,
What we
and
do
that's,
then
we're
is,
gonna
what we do then
verify
is
with pictures, yeah.
keep that insurance going and get it fixed and whatnot. And in that case, I would say no, we probably don't. But if there's no damage or anything, I would just say for the interest of, you know, getting the loan done, and the insurance company's not going to come back and ask anything.
Okay. All
Because
right.
it's already bound.
Got it. Okay. Okay,
You're
so,
eventually going to come inspect anyway. So,
Right.
And look at it. And so, you know, so if you got a client who says, oh, there's no damage to it, but then they come and, you know,
Right.
then you can get into it. So I would make
that's
sure,
when you
that,
get into trouble, yeah. Mhm.
that, that in fact, the house is not damaged.
Okay, so kind of, again, I'm sorry, guys, I know it's been an hour and that's a little bit longer than we usually, oftentimes these calls last about 15, 20 minutes. But we had a lot of information to cover, and so I'm kind of gonna recap, and if anybody has any additional questions, you know, feel free to email me and I can get to Bob, I can get to Lester, I can get to Brent, obviously. But kind of the nutshell is that on the loan side, we're going to need re-inspections, and in most cases that can be done by you, but done by the client. You will see me out there taking pictures of properties, and it just has to be just the front, the back, and a street view, and we can close the deal. FHA is a little bit different, so ensure that you know what type of loan that your customer is getting. As far as the title side goes, Bob is open and ready, and we'll be able to close your loans to close your deals and get things done if need be. And then Lester, obviously, he is 12-hour days working hard, working with claims, but in a nutshell, it sounds like if you evacuated, file a claim, if it's through FEMA first, and continue to file that with your insurance company. There's no issues with filing any sort of claim, and it sounds like it's most important to really get in communication with your insurance agent. We're still able to write insurance. We're still able to close loans. Everybody is still being able to work remotely, even if they're not, we're not in, and I can speak for that on our side. I know everybody I know in my office is working, everybody in Lester's office is working, and everybody in Bob's office is working, even if they don't have power. So we're still here, we're still getting the deals done, and where there's a will, there's a way. We'll make sure that we get everything done. And there's a couple links that I'm going to send. I'll send out the FEMA link so that you can share it with your clients and ensure. Again, remind them that if they did evacuate, to go ahead and file a claim. It's like Lester said, it's probably a lot easier to hit that deductible than we think. And if you have loans, people with loans, just know that we got to take proper pictures. But all in all, we're still here, we're still working, and we're going to get these deals closed. It's just the moral of the story is that we got to be patient. So be as patient as you can. Remind your customers that we got to be patient, but we're here, we're working, we're gonna get this done. So I don't see any additional questions coming in, but if you do have any, please email me and I will get an answer to everybody just as soon as we can. But I can't thank y'all enough for joining us, and I can't thank Lester and Bob, and I guess I'll thank Brent for joining us on this call and giving us all the information that we need to kind of move forward. And we've done it before, we'll do it again. We're gonna rebuild, we're gonna bring back this beautiful city, and obviously the surrounding areas, the river parishes really need our help. So whatever we can do to help them, let's keep that going. So again, thank you guys. I'm sorry that I kept you a little bit longer than usual, but I really appreciate y'all joining us. And again, feel free to reach out with us to any questions. So thank you all so much.